Hello, everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Some of you might not know, but September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. There's still a big gap in the understanding and treatment of people with sickle cell. That's why it always gives me great pleasure to talk to others who are fellow sickle cell sufferers. So you better understand our challenges and what we go through daily. Sickle Cell Awareness Month was designed to help people with sickle cell, to help them get the deserved help they need. This month is a month of showcasing and talking about the various challenges we go through. And I wanted to use this month to not just talk about it, but to talk to others who are sickle cell warriors about their own challenges and how they are overcoming them. Our special guest today is Mary. Mary is a 27-year-old living with sickle cell in the UK. She's currently working on the Black ethnic minority events and an outreach ambassador. She's an NHS blood and transplant ambassador too. She uses this platform to raise awareness for sickle cell and the importance of blood donation in the community. She created a platform called Professional Patients, an award-winning platform to share her experiences of navigating through sometimes difficult challenges facing the healthcare system for people who are living with the disorder. As well as spreading awareness about sickle cell, she finds time in the creative side, creating different ways of discussing issues of living with a long-term chronic health condition. She's also a co-host on a podcast called Self Over Sickle. Amazing lady. And I'm just so honored and delightful that she's taking time out of her schedule. This is not going to be easy, but she took time out before the surgery to speak to us on Sickle Cell Awareness Month. Meet Mary. So everyone, welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we have the amazing Mary, sickle cell warrior. September, Sickle Cell Awareness Month. If you don't know, September Sickle Cell Awareness Month. We are raising awareness about the sickle cell disorder because still at this time, you still think in this day and age, people will understand a little bit more about sickle cell, but we still get that questions, right, Mary?
Yeah.
We all get that question, what is sickle cell? How does it affect you? Is it transferred? Can you transfer it from one person to the other?
Yeah.
But one thing I love about Mary, which I've said in the intro, is Mary's not just a sickle cell warrior. Mary's using this illness to advocate it and talk more, let us other people who don't know about sickle cell better understand it. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Mary Adeturinmo. I'm 27 years old. Was diagnosed from birth. I think my mum knew before I was born that I had sickle cell. And so it affects a lot of people in my family. So there's 5 of us and 4 of us have sickle cell. And then my dad has sickle cell trait. So everyone is always like competing factors in the family of like who's unwell, trying to be support for someone, but maybe you might not be well. So we have to deal with that sometimes. But for myself, growing up, I was managing it relatively fine. I think because my parents kind of concealed us a lot. But by the time you start growing up and trying to like find your own way, then things got a bit difficult. In terms of starting to have more sickle crisis, started to have more having to deal with the healthcare system a lot more. So that was like a massive learning experience, my late teens stroke early 20s. So then in terms of the platform, I feel like I created that just as an outlet to meet other sickle warriors, other people who also live with this condition, see how they manage, discuss like different things. And also in turn, that kind of opened up a lot of different experiences for me in terms of, joining certain platforms or being involved in certain, like the Be Positive Choir, being involved with NHS, the Sickle Cell Society. So all of these things transpired from just being open about the condition, because another tricky thing about our community is that not everyone is willing to be open and talk about their experience. So it's also to try and help people, or myself, just not to suffer in silence, and then hopefully meet other people who don't subscribe to trying to suffer in silence. So yeah.
That's so, and that's so wonderful for you to say, because I remember when I used to suffer so much with sickle cell, especially with getting a job. I wasn't quite sure, what should I disclose, what should I not disclose, or
Yeah.
having a bad day in the hospital and you're not quite sure, who do I talk to about this? I've had a typical bad day and they've overdosed me with the morphine or something. Well, who do I explain? Is this normal? Is this something I'm going through alone? And I think even with me talking, when I talk to other people who going through sickle cell, and I get that kind of inspiration that, oh gosh, it's not just you. Like common trait is that something like I can't swim, for example, is something I'm really dying to learn how to swim. But every time I try to do it, I used to get sick, so that just put me off totally. But
Mm,
having that conversation around these things are still very sensitive. But one thing I picked from your description is that there are four of you in your family that have sickle
yeah.
cell. How has that been growing up in a family where there it's not just you? Because in my family, it's just me who's sickle cell. So everyone is always looking at me and making like, is she okay? Is she not okay? How has
Mm.
it been dealing with others apart from yourself with sickle cell?
It's a bit tricky. I mean, there's the benefits of you can speak to someone else in your immediate family and they will totally understand. And others, it's, I don't know if it's a good benefit or bad, but like if I don't have enough of my medication and I know I need to go and get some more, someone else might have a little bit to help me before I get my next dose. That's like a gift and a curse in itself. But most times it's being able to discuss with other people and say, you know, okay, I'm struggling with this pain. Is this worth me taking this dose? Is it worth me going to hospital? You can talk to someone and they'll be able to fully understand that conversation and like have this back and forth with you. Negative sides is, I live in an African household, and firstly we're all girls, so we're always like trying to make sure we're like cleaning or keeping the house pristine. But it's sometimes very difficult if I'm unwell, my little sister's unwell. Does the burden fall to someone else? you know, um, in terms of trying to like manage if everyone's really sick, how does things keep going? Sometimes you have the pain. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a situation where someone's in pain, you're in pain, whose pain outweighs whose. It's a fine line, like learning to balance between that. But the interesting thing is, because we sickle cell affects everyone in different ways, then it affects every person in a family very differently. So we're able to see the scope of how damaging sickle cell can be, but we're also able to see the scope of the fight that, regardless of having all of these challenges, each of us are pursuing different things and not allowing it to stop. So being able to see each individual. So my mum has sickle cell, so she's a pharmacist. Seeing her have three kids with sickle, which honestly, even think I never thought potentially having kids. A lot of people I've spoken to who have sickle cell talk about how difficult having kids are, and so to see she's done it and she's had three, it's kind of made me think, okay, it can be done. Then my sisters, so me, having sickle, still going to university, about to do my masters, just not allowing all of the
Mm.
operations or the issues to stop. So, but you see my challenges in terms of certain ways it affects me will be different for my sisters. Then my little sister going in to do law, so her trying to like go into that realm, but still managing with her health. So it's interesting to see just how, regardless of all the symptoms that we're dealing with, we're still just trying to pursue our career. And then my younger sister, so to tell you there's four, then my little sister who wants to go into medicine. And so her experience, her journey, because she's had a really difficult journey. So seeing her trying to go through the studying, trying to get work experience, and then just seeing her going through all of that, but then also still trying to balance her health and balance with the symptoms that she's got. So it's So I feel like I don't know if I went off on that tangent, but it's just interesting, just the way we're all affected differently in terms of our symptoms, but we've all got our minds focused on what we want to actually do and achieve in life. Yeah.
But you seem to be the one that is really a strong advocate towards sickle cell. What led that on? Is that because you're the eldest child, or is that something that you just saw as a passion that your siblings are going through this, and you just wanted to see how you could be a voice to it? What led you to be a voice for sickle?
So my mum used to go to like everything. Like she would attend every single sickle event. Like if there's, because obviously prior to COVID, we could go out to like the sickle cell like support groups. We could go to the all parliamentary the sickle cell and thalassemia all parliamentary party. We could go to any local support group, so not just the one specifically to my area, which is Camden and Islington, but she'd go to the one which was in Hackney. Sometimes she'll travel south and go to this there's a guy who helps with welfare, so she would go everywhere. And at one point I just didn't want to bother going with her, because at that point it wasn't something I really wanted to focus on or deal with. I was just like, I want to pursue my career, I want to pursue my life. Like that's, my mind was very tunnel vision. Then there was a point in time where it hit me, the sickle cell hit me so much that you couldn't even pretend anymore, like that, like I wasn't dealing with something. I couldn't hide or pass as if I was not dealing with such a massive thing, because it started to get to the point where I couldn't really walk properly. I was having to use crutches. I was just always in pain. I think I saw that you dealt with chronic pain as well. So dealing with chronic pain on top of sickle cell was just too much. So in all of that whirlwind of stress and worry, I think in those times it is good to try and find people who are dealing with similar things. So I think then I started going to some of the events, but because social media had started to like boom, I didn't really have to like leave my house. I could just be on my Instagram and then see other sickle cell warriors who were like posting stuff. So I just kind of got into that. And in also, I think it just organically grew in a sense. Like I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with just the whole like self advocacy, but it kind of grew in that way. And then also because of the connection she's built, I was meeting those people on social media. So when we'd go to events together, we'd just like be able to kind of merge, and either I'd meet the same people, I'll meet some of the people that she knew. So that's how it bloomed. And my mum's from a bit of the older generation, so I don't think she's their generation. I'm not sure how much they spoke out about it as much. So we could sometimes see that dilemma, because my mum does talk about finding it difficult to express some of the experiences that she's had, but I have to also attribute it to the time that she was in. Like we have so much free space to say as much as we want without being like penalized.
Yeah.
So well, penalized to a certain extent. So there's those things that play. But I think then I started to join stuff. So when I started to join some support groups that were like virtual, and then see other warriors that I thought were doing like so amazing things, just follow them and like keep engaged. All of that just started to grow, and then I joined the choir. I joined this thing in Macmillan Cancer Centre where we did some like exhibition. So joining these things kind of started to ignite me to see that, okay, there's more than just a patient here. Like I'm being able to do a bit more than just be unwell. And then things started to kind of blossom,
I think
I
I
think.
think that is when I say tell people, if you keep your mind busy and do things that connects you to your pain, because honestly it's so beautiful, because you just find ways rather than just always sitting down there and thinking about your pain. But
Yeah,
and so I love the NHS work you did with the blood transfusion.
yeah.
What led you to do that? Are you one of those sickle cell patients, that have to go on blood transfusion regularly? What led you to be one of the voice that because for many people who don't know, when people from the African Black community, Caribbean community cannot take, no, we could take Caucasian blood, but not easily. And our body tends to reject it. Our perfect match for blood donation is actually people from our African, Caribbean, or that, but people don't know this. And lots of Black people, hence not knowing, don't do give blood. But what led you to go on this journey of advocating for it? I know it's one of the major cure for sickle cell is actually blood transfusion, because that helps reduce the sickle cell count in the body and makes you feel a lot better. So what led you to go on that journey?
So what initially started was because, so I am HBSC, so usually doctors tend to think like this set part, like these people don't have as many challenges, but because I started having those, started to have more challenges, they first said they weren't going to put me on blood exchanges, and then after a while they're like, okay, Mary, you're in hospital like majority of the year, we're going to have to do something about this. So they started to put me on the blood transfusion exchange program. And when I started going on that, I think I was just doing it. I didn't really feel like it was working so much. But at the same time, I knew that it worked for other people. I'd seen how it worked for other people. So then in terms of being on it, I also then saw this post on social media. This is why social media is so interesting sometimes. But on Instagram, I saw this post about joining Sickle Cell Choir. And so, and I think it touched on whether if you had blood transfusions or blood exchanges, and if you have sickle cell. I don't know. I don't know if the blood transfusion was as much as important as having sickle cell. So I was like, okay, well, my mum saw it as well. She was like, oh, let's join. So I was like, okay, fine, let's like see how this goes. So join it, and they promoted blood donation a lot because it was originally under NHS Blood and Transplant. So joined the choir now, and in that time, a lot of conversation. I met other people who were on the blood exchange program. And in that space, that's where we end up talking, discussing our different experiences, the positives as well as the negatives, because sometimes the negatives aren't always discussed. So these things were spoken about, and then in that space, it gave me range to like talk about it a bit more. And then also because me and my little sister both go to our blood exchanges together, whenever she's in London, we just like, I'll drive her to the Macmillan Cancer Centre, and then we both have our treatment together. So it's like quite infused, or it's quite infused in my life. And then when I started to see that our community, it was literally 1% of Black people donate. When I started to see those figures, I was just thinking in my head, oh my days, you know, when I've seen individuals' lives be really transformed from it, and then myself, I received 10 units, so that's like 10 10 people have donated for me to receive that month. And so once you start to add up the numbers, you start to think like, this is a really like important, and this is a really important issue, not just for a person with sickle cell, but for people, you know, who might need blood because of pregnancies, might need blood because of accidents, you know, there might be like crimes that happen. There's a lot of things that the person would need blood for. So that started to push the conversation forward. It's also because I was in that space. I do feel like if you're not in a space where you feel comfortable and you're around people that are comfortable talking about it, can be difficult. So I was just in that space. It made it easy for me to discuss these things, and that slowly grew in terms of then we were part of the choir, so we sang about, we went to different, we performed at different events trying to raise awareness, and then afterwards started working with them, with NHS Blood and Transplant, to just be an ambassador and trying to raise awareness in that form. But yeah, it's just, I always believe it's just because the conversation isn't ingrained in our community. You know, it's not like our parents go and donate. It's just something, it's like behavior change. It's just introducing it to the community. Yeah. So that's part of it. I just feel like it, just softly introducing it to people and explaining the benefits is just easy for me to do, so why not?
I'm so
Yeah.
glad you did that, because one of the reasons I had to stop going for blood transfusions because my body started rejecting all the blood I was receiving. And
Wow.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you are out there advocating for better transfusion and getting more people to understand the really important, why it's so important to give blood. Another thing, sickle cell. One of the things this whole thing, platform is all about is about pain, and this sickle cell is all about chronic pain. And when you say pain, people think, okay, it's just minor pain. In your own words, how would you describe sickle cell pain, and how does that affect you? Just not just the pain itself, but how does that also affect you emotionally and mentally? How would that affect you?
Mm. So I think I did a YouTube video because I sometimes touch on like my experiences with the pain side of things. So I think in one of the videos I was touching on how sometimes it feels like it's poison, like seeping through my veins occasionally. And then last night I started to have a crisis. And so in terms of remembering or feeling like blades, that feeling was like blades going through the veins. And that's just the best way I can describe how I feel with it. Other people will talk about shooting pain, some people talk about stabbing. The stabbing is familiar, but I don't feel like I feel that all the time. And in terms of how problematic it can be, it's like it takes up so much of your mental capacity. So, imagine it's a nice bright day, but you just feel very grey, like there's just constant clouds in your view, and everything's just so grey because there's just your mind's consumed by the physical pain. So which in turn affects my mood. So I usually say low moods. I mean, you can phrase it as depression, anxiety, stress, and all of that, but I tend to try and say low moods because that's just the way I can cope with that. So it then ends up putting into that space um, where I'm consumed. Sometimes I can't walk. As a young female who looks visually normal or like she doesn't have an invisible disability, I grapple with that issue. Like I look at myself and be like, oh, I should be able to do this. I should be able to walk. So now I'm like, there's this mental cycle of stress that builds up. And then, it affects multiple areas of your life. Work. I'm so glad. Okay, so in terms of, I'll explain where it affects, and then I'll explain what I feel like helpful. So in terms of affecting work, relationships with friends and romantic partners, family, um, and sometimes even aspirations. Like there was a point in time where I'd given up hope. I just thought, like, this is too much. I don't see myself being able to do anything at this point in life because the pain is so consuming. Then I started to find out some of the help and benefits that I could get that would just kind of help me during the time. So one of the things was, even at a point in time, so I think I was talking about access to work and being able to get things in place to help me get to work, because before what I would do was take transport, walk around London trying to get to work, and that in itself took such a toll on my body and created a massive extra cycle of pain, because I'm like waking up trying to get myself to work, going through everyone knows how rush hour is, so going through rush hour, not being able to get a seat because I look like I'm fine. Then afterwards getting to work, being so physically drained, but having to try and do the work, and then going through that whole process to get back home. And that added to like the extra chronic pain I was dealing with, added to the crisis I was dealing with, added to me having to go to hospital. So then once you get things in place like access to work, where they help me get cabs to work, means I don't have to put my body through so much strain to physically be walking up and down stairs, jumping on trains and having to stand throughout the whole journey. I have the ability to help me get there, meaning I can focus just on my work. Or there was a point in time where things were really bad, where I needed a carer because I couldn't bath myself. Making sure that certain things are in place so that it just takes takes away, does, you still might end up having the pain, but at least you're putting things in place to mediate and to reduce additional stresses that could create more pain. So those are things that I just wish people could discuss more about sometimes, because if you don't even know that these things are there, you could end up just trying to do everything yourself. And that's what I was doing in the beginning. And it did me more harm than good, you know.
You're absolutely right, because when I started university, I couldn't take note because I've always had a problem with my right hand. So I couldn't take note. It was done to the disability helper.
Disability student allowance, yeah.
University, the lady came to me and said to me, "Oh, do you know we could get you someone to take your notes?" I'm like,
Yeah,
"Really?" Because it was just so difficult. So everyone would have all these notes written, and I would be struggling. I would still be on the first page. And
yeah,
what's wrong with me? And I think it is so important if we share knowledge and we help other. Just that little difference saves you a whole. It takes your result from getting a 2-2 to a 2-1, because
honestly,
a huge difference when we just share knowledge or tell, look, this is what helped me to get this part. Because
yeah,
even with sickle cell alone, it is so challenging, and people don't notice it because we all look well. When you see us, we look fantastically well, but inside us, I remember the doctor described it, is that when they did an autopsy on someone who was sickle cell, my doctor told me, and outside the person looked fine, but inside that person looked like someone who's been living in an abusive relationship, because all his body was so battered. They've never seen anything like that.
yeah.
One of the worst autopsy he's done in his life was doing an
Wow.
patient. And he said he really wished he filmed it, because if people see that, then they see what's happening inside out.
Inside, yeah.
No, it's just really crazy what goes on. But one of the things that you have found is that even though we go through all this aggressive of pain, of not being able to fit into society as easily as everyone else would, you found a way to utilize your faith to keep your joy. How have you been able to manage the two? Using your faith to find your joy.
So in terms of generally, so I'm not gonna lie, there has been moments where things have been difficult to hold faith and to feel like you're gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel and feel as though there is a way through it. I know that there's been multiple times where I would be talking, this is why it was easy to talk to family because they understood, but I'd be talking to my family about like, when is this gonna end? How am I gonna make this through? And I did sometimes have challenges with churches because you'd go there and the way they pray for you is as though, let me put my hands on you and you'll be healed. And I'm like, what? Like, I have this condition for my life. Like, it is what it is. But I think, in a sense, when I started going to specific churches that didn't subscribe to certain messages, more so focused on the fact that trying to like manage and cope with what it is now, having being able to speak to like the pastor's wife, potentially sometimes speaking to the pastor, and just having that connection and having someone being able to give you some guidance in that sense, in that realm, but then also being able to see where I was and where I am now. Those things kind of helped in a sense. It's tricky to describe it because when I was, let's say, when I was in the really brink of things, I did need other people to kind of let me know that no, this is not going to be your experience forever. And now in hindsight, I can look and understand what they were saying. And I think it's potentially trying to believe people when they're saying that, because, you know, what for the example, what I'm saying is, and I would sometimes listen to testimonials, you know, but like for my personal experience, being bed bound, not being able to bath myself, like flipping my bed, stuff like that used to bug me because it's like, I'm young, I should be able to do these things and I can't. And then now looking at my experience where I'm actually being able to be active, even though sometimes it might just be in my room and virtually, but I can get up, I can actually bath myself. And then even in a sense of like going back and studying and going back to pursue a master's, that's something I'd always wanted and thought that was never going to be possible. So seeing how, you know, you can go from just being stuck in bed and transitioning to wanting to go back and study, those things, is just to remember that life can have ebbs and flows, and just to remember like, okay, you might be in a low point right now, but you could go back up to the hill. So I can't honestly say that I've always been able to hold faith and be strong and say, yes, I'm going to manage. But at the same time,
Right.
I'm now starting to remember the ups and downs. And my dad talks about seasons, like, you know, everybody's season comes differently. Like, no, time zone, sorry. He talks about time zone. So, you know, it might look like other people are rising higher than you or faster than you, but it doesn't matter, like in terms of the world. Just because we're waking up at 8, someone else will be waking up at 8 a bit later, but it's just all time zones. And I wish I could explain it the way he does, but it just helped me. Those type of things kind of helped me visually to understand that my time will come, I'll be able to manage. But it can be very difficult. I wouldn't even try and say it was not hard.
Our final question is: September month, Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and still so many people don't know about sickle cell. In your view, what would be your message to people out there to teach them more about sickle cell, or people who, someone who's just having a baby, contemplating how do I manage this, little child that's just been born with sickle cell? How do I go through life with that child ever have a future? What would be your message on Sickle Cell Awareness Month?
So for Sickle Awareness Month, one thing I'm like so adamant about is that people, while they're dating, is to go and get checked. Like, go and check your genotype, especially people from African and Caribbean backgrounds. Actually, no, people generally, because even outside of African and Caribbean, there are people in different areas who should still check, different backgrounds and races that still need to check. But specifically ours, like, it's just not something discussed, it's not something that's checked. I feel like churches need to do a bit more in pushing that forward and telling, like, when they're doing premarital like sessions, this needs to be a big thing, because I just think if we can, like, having so many kids still being born with sickle cell and having them to go through some of the things that we've gone through. So that's one thing, trying to get that out there. But even for people that are living with it, there's still the notion is you can still survive, you'll still survive, you can still thrive, but you just have to do it at your own pace. So that's something that I'm still trying to grapple with, and not always feeling like I have to keep up with the pace of the world, but keep up with a pace that's good for my body. So for other younger warriors plus middle-aged warriors, older warriors, that's just something that's really important, because people are still doing quite well, and even when they're in the brink of things, um, you know, they can still get out. But I think it's educating yourself on the different help that you can get, because sometimes we were still quite, I know a lot of sickle warriors who could sometimes be kind of hard-headed. I was, where I was like, I don't need that help. And so, like, if you do get it, it makes life a lot easier. Like, it's not a terrible thing. So those are things. It's just educating yourself on what's out there. And the last thing, which everyone always says, but it's very important, is just not to suffer in silence. That's the really big and important thing that hopefully people can take away.
Now, Mary, this is wonderful. I'm really glad you took your time out. I know how, you've been so busy. You've got your ups and downs going through right now, but we're
Mm-hmm.
fine. And thank you for taking the time out in September month, Sickle Cell Awareness Month,
Yeah.
about sickle cell, and that there's hope at the end of the tunnel, which is something I keep telling people, that we should just be in it. We're all in it together, and
Mm-hmm.
we can spread the word wherever we can. Thank you. You're doing
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me as well. And I hope you have a good day too.
So much.